Good morning, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Bill.
Powerful and influential. What do you think when you hear those words describing you?
I wonder who they're describing, but yeah, it's a funny moniker. I mean, I've been really fortunate to have some opportunities in my career to shape some situations, and it's nice to be recognized, but I must admit I always find the powerful one a little bit funny.
Where did it start? What was your first job?
Well, believe it or not, my first job was selling shoes at Ferragamo's, because I graduated in 1984, which was one of the worst years for the recession, and I was also born in 1961, so I was one of the part of the biggest cohort year of the baby boomers, so there weren't a lot of jobs around. And I had pinned my hopes on getting a job with Expo, and at the last minute found out that I wasn't going to get the job. So what happened was I got the job at Ferragamo's because I spoke Japanese. And so they had a lot of clientele who were from Japan. And then I eventually went into, a few months later, to become a concierge at Four Seasons because of the Japanese, and then ultimately into a hotel training program with CN Hotels.
How did you come to speak Japanese?
Well, when I was deciding to go to university, I mean, first off, the family situation. My father was involved in the coal business, and from the time I was quite a young gal, we had Japanese people coming to our house, so I was very interested in it. And again, when I went to university in '79, I was thinking, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to differentiate myself? So chose to go to the University of Victoria, and ended up taking Japanese as part of Pacific Asian Studies, the major that I have, and economics.
Do you remember how you felt being proficient in a second language, being a graduate, and selling shoes, not being able to get a job that you probably had envisioned?
Well, first off, honestly, at the time, I was thankful to have any job, and I knew this was only going to be a short period of time. The lady who hired me was just a wonderful lady, and at the end of the day, it helped get me through a tough period, and I went on to do something that was probably a little bit more, oriented towards my career goals.
Well, as I was listening to you, I remembered that I think one of my first jobs was selling men's clothing at Eaton's while I was going to school, and I think you learn from every job that you have.
Absolutely.
And one thing you do learn is you learn customer service.
Yeah, and again, it's about meeting people's needs, and I know when I first interviewed in the financial services business with HSBC, people asked me, well, why are you going from hotels to banking? And I said, it's regardless of what you're talking about here in terms of people-oriented businesses, it is about the people, and it is about customer service. And so from my perspective, I thought I had a pretty decent background to go into financial services.
Well, how long did you work in the hotel industry?
About 3 years. I was at the Hotel Vancouver originally, and started out actually as I graduated from selling shoes to being a maid originally. But I remember the lady who was training me was very happy because I could do a hospital corner on the bed, so she didn't have to train me to do that. But no, I started off in the Hotel Vancouver, and then I went to Toronto to the L'Hotel. It's the hotel that's adjacent to the CN Tower, and I ended up going into sort of more operations, analysts, logistics. In fact, I became one of these people who would be sent into a department that wasn't performing well to figure out what was happening with it. So needless to say, I wasn't very popular with my colleagues. So.
But did the experience of selling shoes, retail, actually being a maid in a hotel, did that give you a bit of a grounding, a bit of a humility that...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, again, I think, you have to make your way. You have to learn as you go. I think you have to take every experience as a learning opportunity. I learned to work hard, and I also learned to have a lot of respect for the people who are doing those jobs, because frankly, at the end of the day, if they don't do their jobs right, it's really hard for businesses to be successful. And I remember one day, it was actually quite funny because I was in the in the restaurant at the Hotel Vancouver, and I was one of the assistant managers. And you could see that the waitresses were really unhappy, the customers were unhappy, and there was something, going on. And then you go into the kitchen, and when we saw the chefs were, slamming pots and pans and this and that, and everybody was in a bad mood because food was being delayed. So what it all turned out to be was that one of the dishwashers had called in sick. And it created this cascade of issues, where dishes weren't being cleaned in time, and therefore food couldn't be put on the dishes in time, and of course food was being delayed to customers. So, again, it was quite an illuminating experience, because it told me just how important these frontline people are. No matter what part of the organization, everybody has a role.
And where there can be a roadblock at a certain point that affects everything down the road, right to the front desk or to the table in the restaurant.
Yeah, I learned very quickly that actually it was okay for the general manager not to be around for a little while, but if the dishwasher didn't show up, you were in big trouble.
I want to find out how you got from the hotel business to the financial business, but we'll pick up on that when we come back. Tracy Redies is my guest. She is our CEO today on our series coming from the BD School of Business. We're with Bill Good on CKNW News Talk 980 on the Chorus Radio Network. And she is the president and CEO of Coast Capital Savings Credit Union. We talked about you selling shoes, changing beds in hotels. How did you go from the hotel industry to the financial industry?
Okay. Well, I decided after about 3 years that the hotel industry wasn't really for me, and my real love was trying to do something in business between Canada and Asia. And so I decided to go back to do my Master's of Science in Business Administration at the University of British Columbia. And they were the only university in the country that offered this type of program. So it's a business degree, but you get to specialize in a particular area you're interested in. So mine was international trade and investments in the Asia-Pacific area. And so when I came to my summer term, I, again, desperately needed a job, and there was only one CEO in the country that actually would understand the degree that I had, because he'd done the same degree about 10, 15 years earlier. And that was a gentleman by the name of Jim Cleave, and he was the second CEO of HSBC Bank Canada, and actually one of the brightest people I've ever had the privilege to work with. So I sent him a copy of my resume, hoping that I could pick up a summer job. And it was just I was just lucky, because they just bought the Bank of British Columbia, and they were looking to do a course in international trade finance. So they hired me to put together that course, and by the end of the summer I'd worked with a lot of the folks, and they offered me a permanent job when I graduated the next year.
Would you call him a mentor?
Absolutely. I mean, again, when I think about strategy, I often think about what Jim would do. And the other thing that, again, I was really privileged. I have been really privileged to work with some fantastic people. One thing about Jim is he's an amazing man of integrity. Again, the kind of banker that, you would want to work with.
Kind of guy you'd kind of trust to look after your money.
Absolutely. And again, just a very bright, strategic mind. I mean, our business is in financial services, and even more so now. There's a lot of providers out there, and so particularly for us at Coast, what we're trying to do is think about how do we do financial services differently.
How do you?
Well, I think a lot of it is about what we say is about challenging the orthodoxies of banking. Banking is done in certain ways, and sometimes it's not that great from a customer perspective. So we're very big on trying to make banking, in fact, I call us the unbank sometimes. We're trying to make banking simple, less intimidating, and actually enjoyable, which are not some of the adjectives you'd normally associate with banking. So we're looking across our entire organization, sort of the products we offer, the services we provide, how we provide them, and we're really trying to distill it down into something called simple financial help. And if I can, I'll share a story that kind of really talks about the difference of Coast. We had a young couple about a year and a half ago come into one of our Victoria branches. And they were a young couple, like many young couples, having trouble trying to manage in what is a very expensive area to live. So they're having a few challenges. We opened up an account for them, and we put them through something called the Where You're At Money Chat, which is a very simple financial planning tool that we use to try and identify where we can help the customer make simple steps towards, better financial help. Anyways, the young fellow we put it through, we set him up with an account, got him into a regular savings program, got him some insurance and a small line of credit. And then a week later, his fiance came back and said, could you do the same thing for me as you did for my fiance? So similar type of thing. Well, 10 months later, they came back and they asked to see the branch manager. First off, they'd paid off all their debt. They'd repaired their credit history. They'd saved $20,000. And because of the impact, they said, we changed their lives. And because of that impact, they asked the branch manager if they could get married at the branch.
Really?
Really.
And did they?
And they did. And they actually...
Why isn't that in a commercial?
Well, and they asked the two people that helped them with the Where You At Money Chat, they asked them to be witnesses. So, and we gave them, I think it was a $500 term deposit as a wedding present because, again, we were just, we were tickled that we had that type of impact.
I was going to ask you the difference between being a bank and a credit union. I think you may have answered the question before I asked it. But, I mean, do you think really hard about how to distinguish yourself as a credit union?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's, what we're trying to do, first, we were the first financial services institution in Canada to bring in free checking for all of our customers. Didn't depend on how much money you had with us, how many products. And that actually helps our members to the tune of about $40 to $60 million a year because we now have over 500,000 members at Coast. So we believe that we should have value-based products that are good for our customers. We believe in having this simple financial help and making it easy for our customers to do business with us. And then we have this kind of cheeky, irreverent brand that is all about one of our values as an organization. We take business seriously, ourselves not so much. And I think you see it in our brand and our commercials. And I think what we're trying to be is a lot more approachable as a financial institution. And if you look at the numbers, I'm very proud of because we have fantastic people at Coast, particularly in our branches and our contact centers, who really are passionate about the customer.
So what do you look for when you're hiring? What kind of people, what qualities do you look for?
Well, it's actually quite a process, but what we say is we hire for attitude and we train for expertise. So we're really looking for people who are friendly, outgoing, have some personal drive, sense of responsibility, initiative, and then we train the expertise. And actually now, more so than often, we're often taking people from other retail businesses like Starbucks and other industries like that because, again, we want people who are good with people.
It's interesting. You're not the first CEO to tell me that they actually recruited from places like Starbucks. Mm-hmm. Because Starbucks, and my daughter worked at Starbucks when she was going to university. They have good training programs. They have people with good attitude.
Absolutely.
And that's transferable to a lot of other things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, banking is a retail business, and we're competing, for that. I suppose in some respects you could look at it as we're competing for that $500 you'd go and buy or go and spend on a television set. So, at the end of the day, we have to be approachable and personable and encourage, people to put their savings with us.
When I say leadership, what does that mean to you? What has inspired you watching others in leadership positions?
Well, one of the fellows I worked with in the past, or one of my former bosses, once said to me, Tracy, you can, high performers motivate themselves. Real leaders are the ones that can take people who are, maybe to the average performers and make them believe in themselves more, that they can actually do more than what they thought they could. And I always remembered that. And again, I think at Coast, what we're trying to do, we're really focused on corporate culture and employee engagement. What we're trying to do is bring out the best in all of our employees. And again, another little story, we chose, a few years back when I came on board, we chose to create a new purpose for the company, which is really about really connecting with our employees and engaging them in this whole process that we wanted to go through. Our purpose is to change the way Canadians feel about banking forever. And in that, what we wanted to do was establish a cause that would engage not just the minds of our employees, but the hearts in something that they believed in. And I really do believe that the progressive companies, the leaders of tomorrow, are the ones who are going to somehow engage the very best of their employees' brains as well as their passions in changing and the company.
So how did you do that?
Well, it's actually at Coast. We have a great culture, one that is very inclusive, and I think this purpose was important because unlike a lot of vision statements, which are a lot of mumbo jumbo, our staff almost immediately connected the dots in that if we were going to change the way Canadians feel about banking forever, they had to change the way their customers felt about banking today. And so that automatically led to a bunch of sort of additional things that they would do to sort of wow the customer, help the customer, and we started to embed some of this in our processes and our training. So a lot of what we've done has actually been created by the employees themselves.
We'll come back and talk more about that after the news headlines next. Talking with Tracy Redies, the CEO of Coast Capital Savings Credit Union. You started to talk a little bit before the break about giving back, and I don't think you got quite where you could have gone in terms of how you encourage your employees and your company to actually give back to the community. Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's a big part of who we are as an organization, and it's amazing how important it is to our staff as well. In fact, a lot of times people who come to work or try to get a job with Coast, they mention our commercials and they mention what we do in the community. So this is a big part of who we are. I think, again, one of the benefits of being a credit union is that we have a very balanced model. We focus on our business. We focus on our customers who are also our shareholders, our members. But we also focus on the communities that we operate in. And again, we believe that healthy communities make healthy businesses, healthy financial services customers, and we believe it's part of our responsibility as a good corporate citizen.
To what degree do you gauge where the economy is going? Again, this morning we heard that the Bank of Canada is holding interest rates stable at 1%. How far out do you look, and how important is being able to accurately gauge what's happening affect your company?
Well, it's really important because, in financial services nowadays, the average gross margin is 2% and under. So you really do have to forecast closely because, again, you don't have a lot of room for downside issues. But, we're typically forecasting out 3 to 5 years. We can see trends that low interest rates are actually a real tough thing for financial institutions because banks typically make some of their profits by lending long, typically at higher interest rates, and then borrowing deposits on the short-term lending or paying lower, deposit rates. So the challenge today is that we're in a flat yield curve, and that's really hard to do that. So again, we keep a real close eye on this.
People talk about Canada being in better shape than much of the world, British Columbia being in better shape than many other provinces. Is that the way you see it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we've been very, very fortunate in Canada. I think the banks have done a very good job, and I think the credit union industry has also done a very good job in terms of managing these last 5-6 years. I think Canadians are, in general, a bit more conservative. Our banks are more conservative, and which I think is a good thing. You want your banks to be conservative. Having said that, I think some of the challenges that we, I think, will face over the coming years is one of them in particular is the delevering of the Canadian consumer. And in most developed countries around the world, because of the economic situation, you've seen people shedding debt. And I think one of the challenges we have in Canada is that Canadians have continued to increase their household debt relative to income, and I think that's a problem that, of course, the federal government is trying to manage, and we're certainly trying to get our customers to focus on.
But how much of that is because of the housing market, the cost of housing, especially in Metro Vancouver?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the cost of housing has influenced that. I think what's important, though, is that you have to think about, when you're taking on large debts, can you manage that debt over a long period of time? I mean, it typically takes people to 20 years to pay off a mortgage, and your interest rates can bump around quite a bit. We're in a period of historically low interest rates, and at some point in time, those interest rates will increase. And again, that might put pressure on people who don't necessarily have the wherewithal to withstand it. So it's just something that has to be managed. I think the other thing that's going to affect the industry is, of course, the baby boomers retiring at some point.
They can't afford to retire because of those interest rates.
Yeah, well, of course, that working for a longer period of time, I think, is going to be a factor. But there's no question that the demand for loans and savings are going to reduce as baby boomers increasingly move out of the workforce. So, we need to think about how we manage all those trends.
And what does that mean to your kids? You have 4 kids.
Yes.
Who are just moving into the market where they're going to need either university education or to buy their first home. Are they going to be able to do that?
Well, we certainly have had the chat in my household about the importance of saving money and not spending. I've got 2 kids that are really great savers. In fact, one of them is a banker in our household. When she figured out that she could charge her brother interest on money that he was borrowing off of her, she's used it to her advantage. But no, I think. In fact, we're looking at her as a potential employee like 20 years in the future. But no, I think, it's definitely going to be a tough time. I worry about that. And you certainly see a lot of parents helping their children with down payments. You see, multiple families living in one home. And also you see people moving into increasingly smaller.
I saw a story in the news last night, 300 square foot condos.
Yep.
In Surrey.
Yes, that's right. That's actually a customer of ours. And
the anticipation that there was going to be quite a market for it.
Yeah, no, it's...
$109,000, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody, the dream of every Canadian, and I'm sure in most countries, to own your own home, right? And there's no question in this city that it's become, increasingly unaffordable for, a lot of workers, which is really a shame.
Talk more with Tracy Redies. We're going to find out a little bit about how you balance work and lifestyle. And also, before we're done, I'm sure you've been warned of the Vanity Fair question about which 4 people, living or dead, you'd like to have dinner with. And it's funny, I started this out months ago, and I found it to be one of the most interesting aspects of the hour because the CEOs have all given it a lot of thought. So we'll be back with more with Tracy Redies right after this. We are back at the Beatty School of Business talking with Tracy Redies, CEO of Coast Capital Savings Credit Union. And I wanted to find out a little bit about your personal life. And by that, well, let me just ask you, what's a typical day in your life? What time do you start?
About 6 a.m. I get up, put the kettle on, go and check what massive laundry I have in my laundry room with the kids. Read the paper, read my emails, and then get on to work. And then I go typically till about 7 o'clock at night.
So what's the evening look like?
Well,
do you read? Do you go to movies?
Yeah. So no, I'm an avid reader. I was just kind of laughing because our household's pretty quiet in the evening. My husband's a trader, and he's up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So by 9 o'clock, the Redies household is pretty quiet. So the only people that are up are typically the kids. But yeah, no, I'm an avid reader.
What do you read?
A lot of business books, actually books about the medical industry I'm quite interested in, you know, if I really want some downtime, I'll read a, you know, Elizabeth George or, you know, thriller, a mystery, something like that. But you know, I'm reading a lot of business books. In fact, I'm reading right now Al Gore's latest book, The Future, which if you haven't read it, it's quite a big treatise, but it's a really kind of broad look at the major trends that are going to affect our society in the 21st century.
What do you do with weekends? Do you take them?
Yeah. Well, yes, I do. You know, with 4 kids, we've typically spent a lot of time ferrying them around to sports. In fact, I said to my husband, I said, isn't it nice to know that after we retire, we can get jobs as taxi drivers? But I like to garden when I have time, although I'm really a hacker. I actually, one thing that I am interested in, which is a little, I suppose, unusual, is horse racing. Although I don't gamble, it's more sort of for I just love the whole industry.
So you go to the track?
Yeah, I do.
And you don't bet?
Well, I do, yeah, but not big. That's that risk-averse banker in me that no, this is not a good way to make money. But no, I've been to all of the major races in the U.S., the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness,
wow,
and the Belmont, and I'm hoping to get to the Breeders' Cup at some point. So.
I was going to ask if you traveled, but you in part answered that.
Yeah, yeah.
But do you travel?
Yes, we do. In fact, we just got back from Costa Rica, beautiful country. If you ever had a chance to go, lovely people. Yeah, I've traveled all over Europe, the U.S., Asia. I lived in actually as part of my education. I lived in Japan for a year and also lived in London as well. So I've been really, really fortunate. It's just.
You sound like you've had a really well-rounded life and
chaotic.
Well, yeah, but in a nice way, you know, in a way that I think most people would envy.
Well, it's you know, I've been, like I said, I've been very blessed to work with great people. You know, great husband. Because I mean, honestly, I couldn't do what I've done without the support of my husband.
Do you think about what you're going to do when you do retire?
I might travel some more because I really do love traveling.
Where would you like to go that you haven't been?
Actually, I haven't been to northern Italy, and I'd love to go there. I'd like to do more exploring in China and Asia, Vietnam. I haven't been to. I had you know, great opportunity to travel around quite a bit of Asia, but those are a couple of places that I haven't been to yet. So, and Africa too. You know, Africa is going to have. You know, they think by the 3/4 of the way through this century, we'll have 3.6 billion people on the continent of Africa alone. And of course, you know, there's a lot of challenges there as well. So, you know, these are, like I said, read Al Gore's book. It'll be quite interesting for you to see sort of some of the things that are going to shape our world in this century.
Tracy Redies, ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, we are going to talk about that dinner party. We're back at the Beatty School of Business with Tracy Redies, CEO of Coast Capital Savings. The Vanity Fair question: you're having a dinner party with 4 people, alive or dead. Who would they be and why?
Okay. So a couple of people you may or may not have heard of. A fellow by the name of Peter Thiel. He's a venture capitalist angel investor in the Silicon Valley. He was one of the early founders of PayPal and also Facebook and in LinkedIn and a number of others. I mean, technology is really shaping our world. I'd really like to pick his brain on how he sees things going forward. So he would be definitely one. The other individual that I'd love to have dinner with is Craig Venter, who was one of the first people to decode the human genome. And he's working in some very interesting areas in terms of biotechnology, actually creating synthetic DNA. I was telling a person just before we started that at Harvard they've actually they've been able to take a 50,000-word book and actually encode it onto strands of DNA and play it back. So there's potential for DNA strands to become information storage houses at some point in time. Anyways, Craig is
where are we going?
I know it's, you know, I'm not saying we should be going there, but I just think it's amazing what is happening. And again, these are some of the things that are going to shape our 21st century. Third person, maybe an obvious, is Barack Obama. I'm a big fan. I used to live down in the States. I know some of the problems that he's trying to address, and I think they are quite crucial for the U.S. to address. And I think he's been handed a pretty tough job. Probably in the last 100 years, there hasn't been an American president that's had as many issues as he's had, and I think he's been quite resilient. And then the fourth person would be Premier Xi of China, because I think China is definitely going to have a huge impact on our world for this century for sure. And I'd just like to understand what his vision is for China and how he sees China playing in the global economy, global political arena, et cetera.
How much do you think China is going to impact Canada over the next 20 years?
It already is impacting on multiple fronts, whether it's resource export for our resources, investing in our resources. I think we've obviously, one of the great things about Canada is that we are a very, very tolerant society. We've welcomed immigrants, and I think the Chinese really see Canada as a wonderful country, which is one of the reasons why they've moved here in large numbers.
But do you worry at all about the impact that the Chinese investment could have in Canada or on Canada in terms of the resource business?
Yeah, I think in any situation where you're talking about foreign investment, it has to be managed carefully and strategically. But I do think that there's, and I think the Chinese understand that too. I don't think they would want us to think that they're here to do something other than just work with us to get resources out of the ground. But again, I think that's probably for minds much smarter than me to figure out how to manage that. But there's no question China is going to have a huge demand for resources as they continue to modernize, and Canada stands to benefit a lot from that.
You talked about Barack Obama and the hand he has been dealt. If you were a gambler, and you've made it pretty clear you're not, but would you be betting on the United States?
Absolutely. In fact, I have no hesitation on that front. I'm a big believer in the U.S. There's no country that has produced more wealth for its citizens and, frankly, for the rest of the world. It has a number of social issues that it needs to solve. But you look at the innovation, you look at the productivity, and you look at just you just see the events of this week. I mean, the Americans are resilient; they get back up, and I would never count the United States out.
But will they deal with their debt crisis, and is it a crisis?
There's no question that they have some big debt challenges to deal with, and I think one of the issues that, of course, the U.S. has to overcome is this kind of political stagnation. Frankly, I don't think it's the ingenuity or the capabilities of the American public that is weighing the U.S. down right now. It's this political stagnation in Washington. And
we saw that yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, leaders have to do what's right for their people and right for the country, not necessarily what's right for them personally.
But on the gun issue yesterday, I mean, it shows that I was thinking as I watched the president yesterday, they call him the most powerful man in the world. But there are days when he can't get things done as simple as just a modest change in gun regulation.
Yeah, and you look at, how, I mean, I looked at his face, I'm sure everybody saw the same thing, very haggard, just so frustrated by the whole situation. I think, one of the challenges in the U.S., and I hope we never get to that state here in Canada, but the whole area around corporate lobbying and its impact on influencing, political leaders, I think that's a big problem for the U.S. I really do. It's
been a fascinating hour. I thank you very much for taking time out of a busy day to do it.
Lovely to speak with you, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Tracy Redies, Coast Capital Savings. Thank you. At the Beatty School of Business, the news is next on CKNW News Talk 980.